Hello, this is the video on questionnaires. If I can just remind you as you listen to this video to write the Cornell notes as best you can and also answer the questions that I'll ask as we go through the video. Once you've finished, write this up as neatly as you can into your mind map and have a little look through some of the additional textbooks. Okay, let's have a look at questionnaires. This is another self-report technique. This is one that will be sent out to the individuals and they'll complete it and respond. And we've got some very close similarities with the interview video we looked at before, and we're going to build on some of those concepts that we briefly mentioned in that video. Okay, so in this case it's collected through written questions. So if we're going to ask people to complete some written questions, how do we go about making sure that the questions we do get people to write are to answer are based on good questions? Well, firstly, the reader who receives the questionnaire needs to understand what on earth's been asked. So if they get a question and it's confusing, they're not going to give you a valid answer. So what we need to do is we need to operationalize the questions that we give out. We need to be very clear about the terms that we're using. Maybe don't use scientific language, use kind of more common language. And this is going to mean that anyone who receives a questionnaire can clearly understand what's being asked. We need to try and avoid biased questions. So we need to try and avoid questions which is going to try and hint at what we maybe want as our response or make people feel bad for answering in a different way. Because if we put those leading questions in there, it's almost useless doing the questionnaire because the results we find wouldn't be valid. We want to try and avoid this this process of people wanting to answer in the right way to feel good about themselves, which would be kind of social desirability bias. We also need to design our questions so that when we get them back, they're quite easy to collect the data from them. So both closed and open questions need to be recorded and summarized. So closed questions are questions where they only have a limited number of answers, so like a scale of 1 to 7 or yes, no. And open questions are questions in which people will be able to kind of write a significant amount about what they feel. But both of those need to be collected in some way and then analyzed. So when we're thinking about writing good questionnaires, there's 3 things we could be thinking about. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the differences between open and closed questions. So open questions are going to be qualitative questions. So these are going to be questions that involve quite a lot of words and detail and stuff. And there are an infinite number of responses you can get to an open question. They're handy because if you give people closed questions, you might just you will limit the responses and you won't get anything novel and new. But with an open question, someone might take the question in an interesting direction for you for your research. But if you are going to use a lot of these open questions, then it's going to be very difficult to do that summarization process and to find patterns, because each question could be very different from another. Okay, closed questions will provide you with quantitative data. So this is data in the form of numbers, and as I say, you'll give them a limited range of potential answers. Okay, so with this quantitative data, it's going to be quite easy to analyze it. You just get the information back, you'll summarize it into a table, and then you can do some maths on it. Because the responders are forced to select answers, the information that you're going to get might not truly represent how they actually feel. It could actually be, it doesn't fall as neatly as yes or no, but they're unable to express that to you, and they'll just have to tick one box or another. Okay. So we talked about writing good questions. How would we write a good questionnaire? How would you write a question that people want to fill in and are able to do quite easily? Okay, so we might want to have some filler questions. Filler questions are questions that actually we're not interested in the response to at all. They're not for us to collect data on. They are to try and make the participant not figure out what the aims are of the questionnaire. You can tell if you send them a questionnaire and it's 5-6 questions on exactly what your research methods based on, then very quickly the participant is going to be able to figure out what answers that you want, and potentially this will result in a demand characteristic where they'll just give you the answers that they want to hear. Filler questions might make the participants answer maybe a little bit more of a valid way. The sequence of questions could be quite important. If you're given a questionnaire out on something maybe quite sensitive, maybe quite difficult to answer, if you go straight in with those really tough, heavy questions, people might just be put off answering it at all, or maybe not give you fully honest answers. If you start with maybe some easier questions, just to try and get them used to start filling in the questionnaire, you're probably more likely to reduce their anxiety and get some decent questions by the end. And certainly the use of piloting. So piloting is when we do a short either experiment, observation, questionnaire, and we test it with a small group of people, and then we gain the results back, and we find out how did they find filling it in, did it take too long. You could identify some flawed questions, and then we can fix those before we send maybe thousands and thousands of them out. Okay. What's good about questionnaires? Well, they're cheap, they're quick, they're easy, and you can quite easily get a large number of responses very quickly, which means you've got a good number of participants to do data analysis on. Downsides though, it's very easy to get a bias in this sample. Generally the people who fill in questionnaires and send them back are either pretty much helpful people with too much time on their hands, really, and helpful people aren't normal people. I want to know what unhelpful people think about whatever I'm asking. If I only get helpful people, maybe my results aren't going to be representative. Okay, so in this situation, I don't necessarily want you to answer a question. I want you to create just a couple before you come to the class. So I want you to do 5 questions, and I want you to do them on people's experience of being a member of a gym. What I would like you to do is I'd like you to have 5 questions. In these 5 questions, I would like you to have one question which is quite leading, so you're trying to subtly make someone answer in a way that you would like them to answer. I'd like you to have one that isn't clear, one that's maybe using a technical term or something like that. I'd like you to include a filler question. Try and make it obvious it's a filler question. I want you to have another 2 questions, one of which is nice and easy and not particularly demanding, and then one that is quite an intense question that people might feel a little bit anxious about answering. I would like them to be a combination of open and closed questions, but just the 5 questions will be fine.